So we are joined all the way from Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the School of Information there at the University of Michigan by Dr. Lionel Robert, one of the leaders in research on autonomous vehicles and robotics. Super cool, all the work you're doing there. We thank you so much for taking some time for us today. This is our computer science and engineering class here at Belma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools, all of our middle schools and high schools, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule for us today.
Thank you. No problem. Happy to be here.
Now, before we get into all of the cool stuff you do there at the University of Michigan, just give us a little background. You're originally from Southwest Louisiana,
Yep.
not too far from us, and I went to UL Lafayette. So, just take us through your education. I mean, you've got quite the resume. But
Yeah.
just take us through your educational background and all the stops you had in getting your many degrees.
Yeah. So I guess I got a slide for some of this. So I'll share
Sure,
that. Yeah, I'll
sure. We'd
share
love
the
to see it.
slide I got. Let me.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So the thing is, I got a very unusual background in some ways, right? I finished high school in Southwest Louisiana, a place called Cameron Parish. If you ever heard of Cameron Parish before?
Yeah.
So it's a small town of about like, I guess at that time it was 1,500 people in the town, maybe 3 or 4 thousand in the parish. So
Wow.
Cameron Parish is like the biggest land parish in the state of Louisiana, but the smallest
Uh-huh.
population. So,
Uh-huh.
and that was when it was, back in the heyday. Now it's like even smaller because of the hurricanes, right? So, I graduated there. I ended up graduating from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. At the time I went there, it was University of Southwest Louisiana,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
which
yeah.
they used to call it the University of Slow Learners. So I don't know if they still do that, but that's what it was, right? That used to be what they would call it when I was in school. But it was production operations management, and then I left there. I went to Clemson, where I got a master's in industrial management, and I when I was at undergrad, I wanted to be I kind of talked about being a college professor. And so my I was in a program called the Ronald McNair program where I did some research as an undergrad, and my research advisor had became department head at my department in University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And so I was graduating and I had some job offers and I was thinking about going to California. I had some different job offers. And I also didn't have a lot of offers because, I was in operations, more of industrial operations. A lot of jobs were moving overseas. There were a lot of plants that were shipping their manufacturing. So there was, and so as I was considering my next move, he said, look, I know, he called me up. He said, I know you want to be a college professor and you were thinking about getting a job first and working and coming back. He said, well, the problem is if you go get that job in California, you got a wife and kid, you buy a house, you get a mortgage. He said, you probably won't come back. He said, once you take this job at UL Lafayette as a instructor, see if you like it for a couple of years. And if you like it, you can go get a PhD. If you don't like it, then you don't want to do this and you move on. He said, but there's one catch. He said, you got a degree in operations and production and industrial management. He said, but I have all the professors I need in that area. I got to hire someone in IT. Can you switch over to IT? So I said,
Wow.
sure, sure. Why not? I'll give it a try. And so I went there. I took a job full time as an instructor. I went to school at night. I got a master's in telecommunications at the university because it was cheap because I was a faculty member, I was an instructor. And then from there, I went to Indiana University. But I went to a business school. So in business school, there's something called human computer interaction or information systems. So, quite similar to ACI. So, if you study human computer interactions, or what I study now, I would call it human robot interactions. There are different ways you can study it. There's some in computer science, some in a comm department, some in school information. And it goes back to some of the things I wanted to share a little earlier here is that my background is sort of multidiscipline. I have two appointments, so I
Oh,
am a
cool.
professor of information in the School of Information, and the School of Information is more of an ACI, a more what we call social technical view of research of technology, how humans and technology interact together, and then I also have an appointment in the robotics department where it's more engineering, so that's much more hands-on engineering. So I
Yeah.
I go back and forth between those two communities, sort of linking together and speaking to both communities and in this area of human robot interaction.
That is awesome. But that's really cool. You know, everybody knows about the University of Michigan, all their sports and defending football national champions. But there's a incredible research
Oh yeah.
and technology right there on that campus that I think does not get enough credit because obviously it doesn't grab the headlines. But a lot of great things that are going on there. And I know
Yep.
you're really one of the things that it's all over YouTube. You can find you talking about it. You
Mm.
really talk a lot about autonomous vehicles, some of the technological advancements, and how some of the things you talked about as I was getting ready for this, I'd never thought about.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, is not only for autonomous vehicles, but in all these engineering trends and engineering things that are coming up, that these kids are aware of this because this is the direction that careers are going. This is the
Yep.
direction that life is going, and not getting these skills now in middle school and high school can put you behind in a lot of areas of employment.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing is I was going to go a little bit further here, talk about some of these challenges and something you guys to think about because I love what you're saying, you know. So I get actually do interviews all the time. So I get phone calls from different newspapers across the country. And one of the things they asked me, they said, "Hey, are robots going to take away all the jobs from the humans?" Right? And I said no. I said, but basically what happens is that automation, robots are really good at doing the same thing the same exact way,
Yeah.
and they're really good at picking heavy equipment, right? And so if it's a task that's repetitive, then and precise in robots, right? And humans are not very good at doing the same thing the exact same way, and repetition
Yeah,
gives us injuries, right?
absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But robots are not very good at doing ad hoc tasks of solving on the spot problems, right? Unstructured problems. Humans are very good at that. So the future is going to be a hybrid workforce of humans and robots, right? And so, of course, there's a lot of anxiety, people being replaced. I always tell these executives, I say, look, here's the problem with replacing people with robots is that anybody might take a job for the money, but they come back to see their friends, right? So anyone who has a job for more than any length of time, they really enjoy the people they work with. If you take away those people and give them robots, that's a big change. It's not just an issue of functionality. Work makes up such a big part of everyone's lives that a large part of our social life involves work. And so, to what degree that's going to be missing, then that becomes a huge problem. And so now there's this research push about how can you make robots more social. And that work, so for example, so here in this study here, I was studying the, human interaction with autonomous vehicle. What I manipulated in this autonomous vehicle was the personality of the autonomous vehicle to match it with the human. So in one conditions, the individual was matched with an autonomous vehicle that had the same personality that he or she had, and the other condition it did not. And what happens is that basically the same autonomous vehicle, it can drive worse, but if you thought it was like you still trusted it more and felt safe, irrespective of how it drive. And
Wow.
likewise, if you thought it was not like you in terms of personality, like openness and then you didn't like it no matter how it drove. So for better or for worse, what this means is that a lot of engineers and designers are now designing technology to be similar to the user, to engender, which is controversy. So I want to make it clear there are some people in the field that are saying that that's wrong and it's unethical, right? There's a lot of ethical questions that are now coming up with with AI, with all types of AI, not just autonomous vehicles and robots, AI systems. There are a lot of issues of ethics. I'll give you another less controversial example. There was a man who was a computer programmer. His father died. He passed away, and he decided to make a chat box of his dad, a bot. So he basically took all the
Yeah.
emails his dad sent him and built this. And then he started a company. So basically, you can basically, if someone you love dies, you can basically create this. And so there's a whole lot of ethical issues coming up. That's going to be big for your generation because there are questions about robot rights. There's questions about how human you should make technology because some people will tell you it's misleading, right? You're misleading people. So here in my example, they will say, hey, you should not make the car with a similar personality of the human because you would be one, deceiving the human because technology does not have a personality, and two, you would be inducing them to trust the vehicle when maybe they should not.
Yeah. And that's such a great point because you are absolutely right. The media loves to scare us into thinking robots are going to replace humans, AI is going to replace humans, and you and so many AI experts have said, look, the skills needed in these jobs may change, the
Yep,
types of technology needed in these jobs may change, but you're still going to need people that have
yep,
these skills. And you talked about how robots are doing those repetitive tasks. We have a big Nissan production plant here right up the road in Canton, and we also have an Amazon distribution center. I know you had the
okay,
slide on that.
yeah,
They use a lot of robots, but
yeah,
they need people to maintain the robots. They need people to
exactly,
repair the robots. They need people to program the robots. Because
exactly.
I tell kids this all the time: a robot can only do what a human programs it to do. It's not,
Yep,
you can't watch a Marvel movie or watch a Will Smith movie and think that they're just going to magically get these brains and kill everybody. As
yeah,
funny
yeah,
as those movies are, that's completely unrealistic. But
yep,
it is important that these kids learn that even if, and a lot of these great careers and these great skills aren't even going to require college degrees. They're going to be able to
yep,
get these
mhm.
certifications at community colleges and even high
Exactly.
school programs.
Exactly. And I tell people all the time, if you want a job that's future proof, I would say be a plumber or electrician because no one's going to build a robot to do that job because it's too difficult. Like,
Yeah,
really, if you build a robot to
absolutely.
actually, yeah. So if you become a plumber or electrician, you got a job for life and it's really good money.
Yeah, and again, you're absolutely right about that. They may use a robot to assist them in that
Yep.
job, but they're not being replaced by the robot. And I
No,
think
no,
that's
it
what
just
I want everybody to really understand is that
exactly.
robotic skills are going to be in every field, but it's never going to completely replace humans.
No, 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 because things always change. Yeah, absolutely right. And I think you're seeing, and also think about this. When people have the discussion about the jobs, here's the big underlying assumption that they miss. They assume in the future there are going to be more people than jobs, and that's not true. We're going to have a big demographic cliff, and in the future, let me assure you, there'll be more jobs than people. And so it won't be in the future where you can't find a job. It'll be we won't have enough people to do the job, and we'll be finding ways to make technology do it.
Yeah, and I know something else that you've done a lot of research on is diversity in these fields. And we've
Yep.
had a guest from Alabama, and I got to get you connected with her, Dr. Misty Freeman in Dothan, Alabama, that wrote a book about unconscious bias in artificial intelligence and robotic
Yeah.
programming.
Yeah.
And what she talks about is like, look, it's not that these people programming these robots or
No.
whatever. It's not that they're racist. It's not that they're evil, but they
No.
don't have
No.
the knowledge that somebody from a different group might have. And
Exactly.
especially if you're looking at the robotic and AI trends in healthcare.
Yeah. So we
You have
don't.
more IT people in healthcare, and people are being misdiagnosed because of the
Yeah.
programming done on the front end.
Yeah, so the problem is people don't understand how these things work. And so let me give you an example. We use the term machine learning, and it's a bit of false. And so let me explain to you why. So I could teach my daughter how to drive on one side of town. And if she does on one side of town, I can assume that she can drive on the other side of town, right? That's learning. AI doesn't do that. If you teach it to drive on one side of town, all we know is that it can drive on that side of town. It may completely break down. And so the reason why I say that is because a lot of people don't know how they don't understand the logic behind technology. First of all, AI is primary now, I would say, is probabilistic, not deterministic. So what does that mean? Is that it's hard to retrace how the AI reached its decision. So people don't really understand what's driving these decisions, and so a lot of the bias is just people not understanding, you know, their thinking machine is thinking. It's not really thinking. It's just leveraging the data it has and all the problems that's invested in the data.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that you guys do there is you really prepare students, and we have great engineering programs here in Mississippi as well. Jackson State, our HBCU here local, has great electrical engineering that they've just really got off the ground. They have cutting edge technology in meteorology. We have great robotic systems at the University of Mississippi and Mississippi State. But one of the things you guys do is you prepare students for jobs that are going to be available when they
Yeah.
graduate.
Exactly.
So what are some trends, some industries that are going to need robotics and engineering professionals that maybe people had not thought of?
Yeah, I think home. I think everyone's going to have a robot at home. I mean, you have one now if you have like this the Roomba, right? But think beyond that. Think so as the generation of our grandparents and our parents get older, we don't have enough people behind them to take care of them, and it's too expensive to put them in homes and hospitals. So the future is going to be giving you a robot that can assist you, right? And so, and in all ways, whether it be helping you take your medication, helping you clean your house, you name it. And you're seeing a little bit of that, but you're going to see more of that in ways that I don't think people quite understand, right? So you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're also going to see robots in healthcare in a way that we imagine, especially in countries where people can't afford. I mean, if you ask somebody in America, do you want a robot or a doctor? They'll say, I want a doctor. But there are some countries where they don't have doctors. So it's not a
Yeah.
choice, right? So you're going to see a lot of this being delivered. You're going to see a lot of these, smart homes. Your home, for example, your refrigerator is going to email you and tell you you should buy some more milk. Or even smarter than that, it's going to email your Kroger's and order the milk for you, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible, and I'm glad you mentioned about the surgery because my dad's actually a surgeon here in Mississippi, and he gets asked this question all the time about robot assisted surgery, and he said in some cases it's going to be necessary because of as good as a surgeon is, sometimes you need a machine that's smaller than a human finger
Mhm.
that can be more steady than a human finger, and he said in a lot of cases it can be very useful, and a lot of surgeons that have been around a while are hesitant to learn these skills so these kids that want to become surgeons and doctors, learning those robotic skills can be very beneficial, even if they're
Exactly.
going to focus on being a physician.
Exactly. Now, I think you're seeing a lot of that. And it's a funny thing because we kind of know is in Michigan we have a medical school, and all the students in the medical schools are excited about new technology, even though the doctors already currently out there are not. All the students, so like all the students that are in medical school are now coming out with skills that are very technology dependent, which there's a whole nother conversation about is that good or bad? So, for example, there's a lot of AI being used in law. They're going to replace a lot of lawyers. So you have to find a different type of lawyer now to do that.
Wow, and that's a great point as well. Is that people wouldn't think that you'd have AI in the legal field, but
Oh,
these
yes.
these kids want to go to law school are having to learn all kind of new software, and then and we keep mentioning the healthcare industry. If right now with these new software systems coming out in these hospitals, they're looking to hire more tech people than they are healthcare people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea is that you have to, you can consolidate the programming, the core programming in Silicon Valley and push it down. But then you need someone on site to install it and understand the context, right? So you got to have people in the hospital. Even if everybody using the same software that's in Silicon Valley, every instance is going to be different. And you need people on the ground in the context that understands healthcare and technology to merge those things and contextualize those solutions.
Now, another thing I wanted to talk about, and I know obviously you're a big proponent of kids coming through your program there at the University of Michigan to get a degree from a great university because no matter how anybody feels about Michigan football, the education at the University of Michigan is second to none in the country, and I've always said that. But obviously, but still, we're always going to have kids that say, "Look, I'm not really a college person, I'm not really a school person, but this seems like a field I'd really be interested in." So we actually have a program here in our school district where kids can get engineering certifications while they're in high
Mhm.
school, get robotic certifications while they're in high school. So, are there opportunities for them to move into this field without going that traditional college route?
Yes, Google and Amazon are have their own education system. So you got people who can get a job at Amazon as a warehouse worker, and they can take classes by Amazon online and work their way up to become a roboticist. That's happening. That has happened and is happening in Google and Amazon, for example.
Yeah, and it's crazy how, you know, even though we don't discourage anybody from going to college, especially our first generation college students, but we don't want people to think that's the only way to be successful.
No,
But
no, no, no.
there have never been more opportunities than there are now, which is what I want to talk about next because obviously you come from a very small area. We're a very rural area here in Camden, Mississippi. Um, and we're a all black community in the middle of nowhere in rural Mississippi, but we're talking to you in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So the technological advancements and the opportunities have never been greater. And I actually did article last year in the Mississippi Free Press where I talked about access to education, access to technology. And in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, that access was not there for a
Hmm.
lot of rural communities. They were left behind um, by a ton. So how important is it for these kids? Their grandparents didn't have access, and that's not their fault. People can't choose where they were born; they can't choose their circumstances. But why is it so important to be a part of this now? Because there's never been a greater opportunity. I mean, look at yourself. You're from a small rural area in Louisiana, and there you are at one of the finest universities in the world. So obviously, it can be done. So why should these kids really get into this now to be just as successful?
Yeah, I think you should do it in the sense that there's more accessibility. There's like the University of Michigan offer courses online that are free, right, that you can take. And I think it's like to me it's I want people to think about finding your own path and like not like you don't like you can go into robotics and not go to MIT or even Michigan, right? Some people I know people who are doing robotics and like they're making robotic art, right? There's so many different things you can go into, and I think it's going to change our lives, and I tell people it's not a foregone conclusion it's going to be better or worse. It's up to us. Like we're not passive riders. Like you're not just sitting down on the sideline saying, "Let's see what happens." You should jump in, right, and take charge, right, and learn this technology, learn how to use it, learn how to master it, learn how to shake it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and so I think this is a great time because I do believe we are basically in this, I would call it transformative time where, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and say, "Oh, that's when things really change."
Oh, I agree 100%. Now, before I get to the students' questions, I got a couple good ones. One thing that you talk about in one of your videos is you are adamant about the with the increase of autonomous vehicles that it will literally save lives. And it is something that I never thought about. So, kind of explain that reasoning and why you really think that would be the case.
Yeah, I think basically, so when I think of save lives, I would think so you will get to a point where everything's going to be routed at the central level, city level, right? And so at that standpoint, you can avoid all accidents because you basically can control who does what, right? And so you can basically avoid accidents of people not looking, people not paying attention. Even if you can't control one driver, you can make the adjustments, to another one. But there's all this opportunity that you can have to at least remove human error. I think that's the biggest thing. Remove human error, and a lot of the accidents are driven by human error. And so I think there's a lot of possibility of reducing that.
Yeah, and I agree, but just for argument's sake, what about the people that say, well, what if there's a glitch in the system?
Yeah,
Uh, what if the technology in there stops working? So just for
yeah.
argument's sake, what if somebody said that?
So this is a big problem. So I'll go one better than that, right? That's one problem, but that's not the real problem. Here's the real problem. Imagine this is a real problem 'cause they're struggling with now. Imagine if someone hijacked autonomous vehicle and used it for a terrorist activity. Right? That's something that they're really afraid of, right? So that is the problem, and this is like the issue of cybersecurity is the big. So that's another area. If you go into cybersecurity, let me tell you, you will have a job for life because cybersecurity on every level, whether it be user or organizations, because that is the biggest thing going forward. Of course, we know about data being stolen from user data, being issued, but there are much more bigger problems with security, and that's a perfect example of, right? Hijacking the security to do things, right? So, and of course, there's the issues of failure. I think the failures are something that we can work out that will take time. I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned about the fact that we can work out those problems, but someone can still hijack your autonomous vehicle, and then just imagine if they drive you off the road. And if you have these new autonomous vehicles where there's no user input. So there are some of these like Waymo has autonomous vehicles where there's no steering wheel in some cases, right? So like
Wow.
yeah, so like if you have like there's some type like if you have a Tesla and it goes crazy, you can grab it and take over and you can drive it. But some of these autonomous vehicles are being made where there's no steering wheel. And so if it goes crazy, you're just
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned cybersecurity. And I'm not trying to go down another rabbit hole, but for kids that we have, one of our kids in here with me now, his brother just joined the Air Force.
Yeah.
The military right now,
Yeah.
Space Force, Air Force, especially those cybersecurity certifications kids can get without ever stepping foot on a college campus can
Exactly.
lead to six-figure salaries after four or
Exactly.
five years serving in the
And
military.
the big thing. I mean, I was in the military. I was a captain, active, reserve,
Oh,
and active.
awesome!
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I did
I'm an
not know that.
ROTC. Yeah, I was a transportation captain. So I'll tell you, I was a transportation captain, Army Reserve. If you So let me tell you the biggest technology change that's going to occur. It's in the military. And in particular, it's the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps will now shift their forces to be lighter. And if you, in the future, to be a Marine, you're going to have a robot dog and a drone. So the future soldier in the Marine, the future foot soldier is going to have like a control for a robot dog and a drone. That's how they're going to be
Wow.
operating in the future of the Marine. So if you want to learn about technology and robots, I was going to say it, but the military is the way to go in terms of getting hands-on skills and getting training, Wilson.
Oh man, I'm telling you, we have a big Air Force tech school down on the coast here in Mississippi, and it is almost it's like 90% of the kids that are there are getting those technological jobs in the Air Force and Space Force, and they're like, "Look, I'm going to be making six figures, and I'm never going to college." So
Exactly,
it's
exactly.
the same technological training. You're working with cutting edge technology and robots that you
And
cannot find anywhere
you
else.
can't find because the military will be paying for the best of the best training and equipment. Like they have like even a private sector won't be able to keep up with the innovation of the military because they're going to they're going to have the latest whatever it comes out with. So whatever you do in the military, the civilian world is going to be years behind that. So if you can master that, I'll give you a perfect example, a little bit unrelated, but my first job in the Army was a mechanic. I was enlisted, and I got trained to be a mechanic. I came out, headed back to college. I was able to get a job working at, a garage at Kmart, making really good money, just because I was a certified mechanic from the Army. Now, that's a small
Wow.
thing, but it's the same idea behind it, right?
Oh, big time. Well, I do have a couple questions from the students, and I like these. This first one, this is Bryson Stevens, the one I mentioned. His brother just joined the security forces in the United States Air Force and just moved to Alaska. So it's not every day people get to live in Anchorage, Alaska, one of the most beautiful cities in the country. But he asked, what is it about your job that you enjoy the most?
So I enjoy learning new things. I try to solving hard problems that I can define, and teaching. Working with students. So we're learning together. I always say when you do research, the answer is not back of the book, right? And so you're working with.
Oh,
I do a lot of research with the military. I don't know if I mentioned that, right? And so I
oh,
do a lot of
cool.
work with, yeah. So the Army funds a lot of my research, and so I work with a lot of Army people. Some of them civilians. There are a lot of civilians who work in autonomous vehicles for the military, and so I love like the new problems, solving new problems, learning together with students. And yeah, and trying to provide the military, not just the military, but other people with like a solution that we don't know. Like here's a problem. Here's a robot. How do you get a robot to work with humans in this context? Well, let's find out, right? And then having them people take that solution and apply it in the real world context. So I would say learning
Yeah.
to solve new problems.
That's awesome. I think that's so. I'm a graduate of Louisiana State, and I know University of Michigan offers a lot of the same thing. Is that getting to work with people from all over the world? When
Yep.
I was at LA, that was the first time I'd ever worked with anybody from Sweden. That was the first
Yeah.
time I'd ever worked with anybody from Africa. That's the first time I ever worked with anybody from Japan. So
Yep.
working with different cultures and different backgrounds really helped me become a better teammate when it came to collaboration.
Yep.
And that's something else you talk a lot about as well is collaboration within robots because you got to bring those different perspectives and
Yep.
I really that as well. That's really cool.
Thanks.
This is Arius Cooper. He's a senior, and he asked, "What has this area of research showed you as far as the future of cars becoming more advanced?"
Yeah, I think you're gonna see. I'm not sure. Does anyone remember Knight Rider? You probably remember Knight
Oh,
Rider.
I do with Kit. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that's what cars are going. They're gonna be your best friend. Like they're gonna be basically talking
Wow.
to you, see how you're doing. They're gonna keep you awake. They're also gonna be basically maybe determine if you can drive and when you shouldn't drive.
Wow.
But they're gonna be hooked up to your smartphone and to your home. It's gonna be one seamless interaction,
Wow.
right? So, but let me go a little bit further. people ask me why I think autonomous vehicles are going to change the world, right? It's not so that you can drive and drink coffee and check your email. Imagine if CVS, right? If CVS
Yeah.
had no stores, it had electric minivans or vans that circled the city, and when you order something online, that van would drive up to your home. A robot would come out there and deliver it for you. So if you were CVS, you
Wow.
would never need a store and the inventory and the inventory associated with it or the employees. So you can fundamentally change the way commerce actually occur.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. But a couple of things before we go. You've got some great things on YouTube for people to watch. Like I said, I got to watch some of them. I learned a
Yeah.
lot. So if anybody's interested in this, you have several YouTube videos,
Yep.
Dr. Lionel Robert, also on your website there at the University of Michigan. Or there is your, what are some other places we can see some of your work?
I think those are the main ones. You can University of Michigan. You can Google my name, but I think University of Michigan, YouTube, always new content going up there. I think YouTube would probably be the one that you always can find content.
Yeah, and the last thing before we go, and when we talked about this, you're from a small area. One, you said the most sparsely populated parish in Louisiana, but yet here you are, one of the leading researchers on this area in the United States. So obviously it can be done. So if these
Oh
kids
yeah,
are thinking, I'm from a small area, my parents couldn't do this, my grandparents couldn't do this, obviously it can be done.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what are some ways that they can prepare themselves to follow in the footsteps of people like yourself?
Yeah, try to do the best you can and and then learn from that. Like don't think you got to be number one. Like you do the best you can and you learn from the however you did it and you try to do better. If you do that everywhere you go, before you know it, man, within a few years you're gonna be a lot further than you were. And what that means in the military, what that means in college, right? And don't be in a hurry. Like, I tell my kids, Michigan's a great school, but it's very expensive if you're out of state. There are some great in-state schools. If you do go to college, the number one thing I say is undergrad is to get a degree with as less debt as possible. You can always go to grad school. If you want to go to Harvard, MIT, great, but you always go to grad school, right? In some cases, if you get a PhD, they'll pay you. But don't get yourself into massive debt and a bad situation because if you leave that flexibility, and you do the best you can, I don't care if it's at a community college, it really doesn't matter, right? Do the best you can and learn from that. You'll look up and years later you'll be a lot further than you can imagine, right? But it doesn't start with like right now I'm gonna be the best thing. It starts with just a little bit at a time.
There you go. And a quote I always use, if you get 1% better every day, at the end of the year, that's 365% better.
Exactly, exactly, and that works. I mean, that actually works, and it's easy. You don't always tell my kids, first of all, learn how you learn. Right? It's not learn how you learn. I don't care if you get a C or a B. It's like, why did you get a C? How can you improve? Work on improving a little at a time. It adds up. It really does.
Absolutely. Well, again, we thank you so much for taking some time for us. I learned a lot today, so I really appreciate you giving this. And again, we thank you, Dr. Lionel Robert, University of Michigan School of Information, all the way from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I don't say this often, but I'll say it for you. Go Blue.
Thank you. You too. All right.
I
Bye.
appreciate it, my friend.